All right. So, um, well, Trump has been flooding the airwaves with shit, namely all his executive orders. Things are going to slip through the cracks. One of those things, which everyone missed, is that Trump is still interested in Greenland. We still don't know why, but he's still interested in Greenland. So, you know who hasn't forgotten that? The EU. And they're not taking this lying down. This article is titled Ready to Defend EU Hardens Line on Greenland as Trump Doubles Down Threat. Yes, there we go. Maybe I'll be able to read a little bit better now. All right, there we go. Donald Trump's repeated threat to take control of Greenland one way or another has aroused a sense of alarm across Europe. The European Union is hardening its official line against Donald Trump's threat to take control of Greenland, using military force if necessary, following new comments that leave no doubt as to the seriousness of the American president's expansionist intention. Now, for those who are concerned about that, using military force if necessary, that's what he said about taking control of Greenland. This is not the EU threatening Trump. This is them remembering what Trump said. And, they're right to stand up to him because they are showing. And we used to do the same thing too with Putin and Ukraine. That if you stand up to a bully, more likely than not, they slither away. Now, that doesn't always happen because Putin, so it's not necessary, but sometimes it works out, like with Colombia. You would think that Trump won because the Colombian president relented after threatening tariffs of his own because the U.S. wanted to impose tariffs because Colombia didn't let a couple of military planes land there because to unload deported migrants. Now, the actual story is that because they were military planes, first off, this is nothing new. These deportation flights have been going on. They went on through the Biden administration. So this is nothing new. This isn't something that Trump started doing and that he should get credit for. This has been going on for a while. I don't know about the previous administrations to Biden's, but this isn't anything new. But Biden used either civilian or charter aircraft. Because if you use military aircraft to land on a sovereign country, you can see how that's a really bad look. That's basically going to freak people out to see a foreign military landing in their country without prior authorization. All Trump had to do, if he really wanted to show his might by handcuffing migrants and sending them back in military aircraft like they're criminals, that's all well and good, but if you're going to send them to another country in a military aircraft, that could cause a lot of trouble. So they had to concede. It's like, okay, we will. I think they landed a couple of those aircraft in Brazil, and then Colombia sent a presidential aircraft to pick them up. But seriously, all you had to do was, use what is supposed to be your brain for once in your life and realize that, maybe doing civilian aircraft might be a good idea. Or if you're going to use military aircraft, at least let Colombia know you're coming. So they're not like, what is going on? Why is the U.S. sending military aircraft to our country? It's really not that hard. But this isn't about Colombia. This is about Donald Trump wanting to take Greenland for some very odd reason. All right. The European Union is hardening. Whoops, I read that already. I think we're going to have it, Trump said over the weekend. I don't really know what claim Denmark has to it. Of course you don't, because that would require understanding history. But it would be a very unfriendly act if they didn't allow that to happen, because it's for the protection of the free world. Translation, I don't care if you own something. I want it, and so by right it's mine, because I'll get my big army to annihilate you because I'm a bully. I'm sorry, what? No wonder people don't want to deal with you. But I shouldn't say unlike Colombia, because they did actually make a deal. But the EU is not having any of this. Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark that is considered highly strategic due to its location in the Arctic Sea and wealth of rare metals. The effects of climate change are said to open new maritime routes and drilling opportunities. And that is all we need to know as to why Trump is interested in it. It's not like how some people think that they should be honored to be Americans, or even worse, the assumption that they want to be Americans because apparently everybody who's ever existed always wanted to be an American. Now, I love this country. I could never see myself living anywhere else. But I am not going to pretend that everybody wishes they lived here. Because people love their countries, regardless of whatever warts. Just like I love this country regardless of its warts. I still love it. I'm going to try to make it better. So do other people. It is only those who seek a better opportunity, who don't see their country as being their future. That doesn't mean they hate their country. It just means that they could find a better future elsewhere. So those are the people who immigrate, or because, there's violence in their country. Their country is just too dangerous for them, whether it be because of gangs, because of political opposition, whatever the reason, they don't feel safe. Or they just simply prefer the American culture, or they fell in love with an American and want to move here. Whatever the reason, there's plenty of reasons to want to come to this country. That doesn't mean that everybody in the world dreams of becoming an American. So at least this is laying bare the absolute truth. Unlike Denmark, the sprawling island of 56,000 people is not a part of the 27-country bloc, but enjoys a special status with access to EU funds and freedom of movement to Greenlanders, who are considered EU citizens. Moreover, Greenland is covered by the Mutual Defense Clause laid out by the EU treaties, similar to NATO. Under Article 42.7, all member states have an obligation to aid and assistance if another member state falls victim to armed aggression on its territory. In other words, if Trump were to invade Greenland because he thinks that, it would be us versus Denmark or just them versus Greenland, whatever fantasy is rummaging in that empty head that he calls a brain. Even if that were the case, the fact is that we would end up at war with the entire EU. Now, this is where things get messy, because the US is part of NATO, Denmark is a part of NATO, and they have the same mutual defense clause. So, yeah, things could get really, really messy, but I do not doubt that the EU and basically all of NATO would come to the defense of Greenland, because just like Putin attacking Ukraine, we can't let the bullies win. We've seen throughout history what happens when you acquiesce to bullies. So, borders may not be moved by force, to whom it may concern, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Tuesday after meeting with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. The inviolability of borders is a fundamental principle of international law, he continued, without mentioning Trump by name. The principle must apply to all. It is up to Europe to define the future of our continent, Frederiksen said. In Paris, France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that if Denmark were to request solidarity from EU countries, France will be there. Yeah, this is looking less and less good for the US. And rightfully so, because, again, what the hell? And in Brussels, Andreas Kubilius, the European Commissioner for Defense, declared, "We are ready to defend our member state, Denmark." The previous day, High Representative Kaja Kallas suggested the EU should speak the language of transaction to influence Trump's decision-making, and implied the president's incendiary remarks should not be taken word by word. Now, granted, he's a real estate mogul, so he lives in deals, and he probably thinks that this is a good bullying tactic to get a good deal. So I see what she is saying. I mean, maybe it's highly likely that Trump didn't actually intend to use military force, but considering this past week and what he's been doing, considering he pardoned a bunch of very, very violent people simply because they protested on his behalf, they used violence on his behalf, I can see why people are taking him at his word. I can see why she thinks that you can bargain with him, that you can make a deal with him. But, I don't know. I mean, that assumes rationality. And the way Trump is acting is anything but rational. So, once upon a time, it probably would have been true, but I really don't know. I would like to think that Trump wouldn't actually start a war with Denmark, but I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, he's been wanting Greenland since the first administration, so Asked if the language of transaction meant a possible deal on Greenland could be struck with Washington, Kallis drew a red line. No, we are not negotiating on Greenland. We are supporting our member state, Denmark, and its autonomous region. So, what? Okay, she's continuing. What I meant with my comment was more general. This is the language that we have understood that the new administration speaks, Kallis told reporters on Monday after a meeting of foreign affairs ministers where EU-US relations were discussed. We should also take into account what is our strength. We are an economic power. We are very much interlinked with America, she went on. It's not like somebody telling us what to do and we are following, but we are also stronger. We shouldn't underestimate our own power. So it sounds like, Trump is threatening economic force. So it sounds like she's perfectly fine with a tit for tat when it comes to tariffs, or other sanctions maybe, which I don't know what their position is, how strong they are to be able to do that. But I could see that happening. I could see that could be a solution. Putting sanctions on them if they try to invade, or even if they try to punish Denmark by imposing tariffs. I could see how that they could impose tariffs back. Not just, the entire EU imposing tariffs. Or, again, if an invasion is tried, first off, even Greenlanders are like, we would need to rescue the invaders. But that to impose some sort of sanction on the U.S., were we to actually do something so mind-bogglingly stupid as to attack an ally, not just a sovereign country, but an ally, simply because Trump wants to, rename it Trumpland? I mean, I honestly have no idea, outside of wanting the resources, what exactly he would do with it. The interventions represent a more resolute stance compared to the lukewarm reaction given in the initial days of the political saga when Trump refused to rule out the possibility of deploying the American army to gain control over Greenland. We need it for national security, Trump said earlier this month, without elaborating what is it about national security that makes it necessary for us to possess Greenland. Because again, we are talking about an ally, a NATO ally. So it's not like they're doing side deals with Russia or the Chinese or whatever it is he thinks is going on. They are our ally. So I'm not sure where he gets this. It's not even you're taking territory from an enemy. You're taking territory from a friend. Not sure what national security he thinks he's protecting. Back then, the European Commission spoke of extremely hypothetical scenarios and offered generic statements about the importance of respecting international law. I think we already know what he thinks of international law. But with Trump and his officials doubling down on the threats, the prospect of an American invasion has become ever more tangible for Brussels and other capitals. The sense of alert spiked after details emerged of a 45-minute phone call between Trump and Fredrickson, during which Trump insisted on his desire to take over the island, and Fredrickson replied Greenland was not for sale. And also, Greenland themselves would like to become independent from Denmark, and I don't know, maybe a bunch of foolhardy Americans think that means that deep down they want to become part of America. as opposed to actually being independent like what they want. The phone call was described as icy and aggressive by the New York Times. The Financial Times called it fiery and horrendous, citing sources. The Danish government contested the description of the exchange, which took place 5 days before Trump was inaugurated. The revelations have firmly put the issue at the top of the EU's agenda and prompted fresh questions about how, or even if, the bloc could repeal a potential invasion. Friedrichsen has embarked on a mini tour to meet with her European counterparts, including Germany's Olaf Scholz, France's Emmanuel Macron, and NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte, to shore up political support for the unprecedented challenge. Europe is facing a serious situation with war on the continent and shifts in the geopolitical reality, Friedrichsen said on Monday. In moments like this, unity is crucial. Meanwhile, the Danish government announced an injection of 14.6 billion kroner, or 1.95 billion euros, to boost its military presence in the Arctic and North Atlantic region. The issue of Denmark is expected to loom over talks when the 27 EU leaders meet in Brussels next week for an informal summit devoted to defense and transatlantic relations. Okay, so, as usual, Trump is going to waltz in there like a bull in the china shop and expect everyone to kowtow to him. And that's not going to happen. But just so people are understanding, let us find out how many that is in dollars. So that would be 2 million. Over $2 million. Yep, that would be $2,033,622. Oh, hold on. $2 trillion. Huh? How in the world can that translate to trillion? Oh, billion. My brain is somewhere else. 2,033 million. Wait. Billion, thousands, hundred. Okay. 2,033,000. I'm starting to sound like Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's awesome. 2,033,622,552. Ugh. All right. So, this is, like I said, hopefully nothing comes of this. Hopefully this is resolved peacefully, or Trump just drops it because he realizes that, like a good little bully, he's not getting what he wants. So instead of trying to force it, he'll just back down because, he's a wimp. He's not the strong man he thinks he is. Or maybe he'll force his hand and the EU is going to have to hand him his ass. Now, the U.S. military is supposed to do what the commander-in-chief says. But we saw what happened in, say, Vietnam when that happened. There were plenty of people who dodged the draft. Regardless of what you think of those people, they stood by their convictions. They found, or in the case of Bernie Sanders, he filled out a waiver. And then, of course, there's Trump, who, suddenly had bone spurs. But So there are people who dodged the draft, who left the country, but they all had one thing in common. Well, actually, I think Bernie would have fought if he didn't have a health exemption. So I can't say they all have one thing in common, but most have one thing in common. They disagreed with going to Vietnam. So I can only assume that this will happen again. That we do not have an army of people who are like, the commander-in-chief says I need to invade Greenland, I'll do it. Yeah, there might be some. There might be some who will, there are mega faithful who literally have said, I will die for Trump. So it's possible that there are some people who would gladly invade Greenland for him. But I would think most of the military would not. Even if the generals were simply yes men, they would not have enough people. And he would have to institute a draft, which would be super unpopular, if for no other reason, because this war would be super unpopular. So Trump would just be putting himself in a world of hurt in so many ways. So do I think that he will actually invade? I would like to think he wouldn't. But I would not put it past a madman to do something absolutely insane. So yeah, that's where we're at on Greenland. Hopefully things get resolved peacefully and that Trump realizes that the rest of the world is against him and that he wouldn't have enough. It's possible he might think that the U.S. Army would be enough. The U.S. military, not just the Army. The U.S. military would be enough to quash the rest of the world. But again, then we would be dealing with how many people who are currently serving in the military who would jeopardize their careers just to say, this is not a just war. We are not doing this. So there's always that possibility. I believe that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.